is necessary to provide for the services of the State of Grenada for the year 2022 by means of a Supplementary Appropriation Act. Be it resolved that Supplementary Appropriation Act 2022 for the period the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2022 be approved.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that whereas it is necessary to provide for the services of the State of Grenada for the year 2022 by means of a Supplementary Appropriation Act, be it resolved that Supplementary Appropriation Act 2022 for the period 1st January to 31st December 2022 be approved. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, since this is a money bill, I would like to submit that I have the Speaker's certificate to proceed.
Continue.
Madam President, we are here in Parliament today to ask for the approval of this money bill, Supplementary Appropriation Bill of 2022. Madam President, since assuming office in June 2023, we have examined the state of affairs in this country, and we believe there are serious matters that have to be dealt with. Some has to be dealt with now, and some could be dealt with in the future. There are some immediate ones that cannot be put on hold. Despite the last administration budgeting for many of these activities, changes within the year would have made it difficult for even the past administration to implement some of those things. And being a very concerned administration in regards to putting people first, it is even more difficult for we to achieve some of the goals that have been set for the year 2022. Some of these matters, they are very, very important, and it's difficult to ask people to hold on until 2023 budget. So in order to get them off the ground, in order to continue the service to the people, we are here today seeking that approval. Since assuming office, Madam President, we have been able to achieve some of the goals that we have set. The general public is aware of even some of the things that we campaign on. The general public is aware of some of the promises that we made. Madam President, the issue of paying doc salaries is something we promised while we were on the campaign trail, and something that the Grenadian people needed, something that the public servants and the teachers needed, something they were grieving for, something that brought about work to rule, which really and truly was not helping our society going forward. And Madam President, those promises was made not knowing when the election will be. So it was all good for the former administration maybe not to have paid that. And then it would not have been a problem to come to Parliament and ask for a supplementary budget. But the fact that the election was called in June, and we have to listen to the people and pay money like that in regards to the doc salary, then we have to be here today. The issue of pension that we have been talking about as a political organization since 2013. Madam President, the day is finally here. And we make no bones about that. The people, the workers in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique, who have worked for 20, 30, 40 years in the service and left the service quietly, having to resort to poverty. We are here today to seek the approval for this bill so that these people will have a different life and a change in terms of changing the lifestyle in terms of going forward. Madam President, there are other programs that we wanted to implement from June to the end of December. I am sure that every parent that has a child, or children going to school, pre-primary, primary, secondary, today, as I speak, they are enjoying the privilege of not having to pay school fees and school charges. Madam President, my good friend, Senator Lacrette, will definitely indicate the whole question of trying to put the new hospital wing into operation and implement other programs. It is against this background, Madam President, that I'm asking for this approval. Madam President, in the Ministry of Finance, we are asking for $26,440,000 to deal with a number of issues. The whole issue of security, Madam President. The whole issue of working hand in hand with GDB to make sure that some of the programs we had there to accommodate the Imanis and contract workers are being carried through. Madam President, the question of providing credit facilities for our young people who want to go abroad and study. And the whole question of making sure that the service providers in this country are being paid. And the question, Madam President, of the pension and gratuity. Over $60 million will be placed in the economy of this country. We can anticipate what will happen around the end of November, December, and the kind of Christmas season that the people in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique will be having. Madam President, despite everybody will not get part of the $60 million, rest assured that the spending power of that will have the rippling effect in the hardware stores, in the supermarkets, in the banks, the car dealers, the farmers. They will be feeling the rippling effect of the $60 million. And the lifestyle of the people that will be affected directly will be transformed. And this will be a perfect example of the transformation that we want to see in our society. Madam President, another area that will be much affected. We have just established the Ministry of Implementation, Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation. This is a brand new ministry that we never expected and we never catered for per se, because we came in the middle of the year when budget was already running. So we need to get that ministry in order. And that ministry is important to our society. With the implementation rates in many areas of 30% or less, we can't afford to be going outside there asking institutions and other nations for assistance. And when the assistance is being approved, we can't implement. And sometimes we have to pay back. This ministry, this new ministry, Madam Speaker, will answer some of these questions. Madam Speaker, Madam President, I reached there. The Ministry of Infrastructure will be taking up most of that money that we are asking for. Out of that $194,702,991, the Ministry of Infrastructure, Physical Development, Public Utilities, Civil Aviation, and Transport will be taking up a big chunk of that, over $88 million. And this is necessary because the refurbishment and extension of some of government buildings must take place, Madam Speaker. The devolution program is a program that some people look forward to. It's a program, it's not the best for our people, but at this point in time, on a short-term basis, it is necessary. But rest assured, it is a program we will transform. It is a program that this administration will transform. Madam Speaker, there are a number of the Molina Road, which was catered for maybe a couple of years ago. Today, the cost of material has increased significantly. With the war in the Ukraine, that has affected this project. And therefore, what you have anticipated cannot work today. So we need to beef up that. Madam Speaker, drains has to be addressed. The repair of schools. We were happy to have visited all the schools on the first or second day. This administration makes sure that our presence was there. But that does not mean to say that they don't need repairs. Presently in St. David, the good alma mater of the Prime Minister have to be housed in a community center because of the repairs. So while these work are going on, and we don't know how we're paying them because we have not approved the bill as yet, but I trust by the time we leave here, the workers will be happy to know that the bill has been approved and we are ready for them. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing Affairs, and Gender Affairs will also be affected. And over $8 million they are requesting in order for the work to be done. Madam Speaker, the question of agriculture, the question of the feeder routes. Presently on my desk as I speak, there are requests from farmers in this country that they need access to their land. Gone are the days when you could have towed your donkey up the road and put 2-3 bags of nutmeg and come down with it. Gone are the days when you could have come down with a bag of nutmeg on your head and you're not holding it because you balance yourself and 2 under your arm. Farmers have advanced and they are making the progress. And the issue of access roads to their farms is of crucial importance. Very important to the people of River Road and the continuation of this very important project. Those projects, Madam Speaker, that have started long before the war in the Ukraine and have not been completed as yet. Again, the cost of material, the freight charges is important. And therefore I think we can justify why it is important to make sure that those things happen. As you know, Madam President, we are new kids on the block, new faces. But I think many of us are learning quite quickly. And it is important that when you're dealing with the business of our people, you want competency. And therefore this new administration has taken on their own, without anybody making any demands, to train ourselves. And we will have continuous training. And I must mention to the Prime Minister, we may not want to just limit that training to government ministers, but we may have to extend it to parliamentarians. At the end of the day, we all are here to serve the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. But rest assured, colleagues, we will be, as the executive of this government, we will be extending that kind of training to the legislative in its entirety. Madam, last but not least, we have come to the conclusion that the police force needs a lot of manpower if they have to offer this country the kind of security that we deserve. And immediate steps will be put in place to train at least 75 policemen. Immediately, Madam President, we will be addressing the fire truck service in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We cannot afford for that service, not even adequate in Grenada, but really and truly not even present on any level of efficiency in our sister people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. So we will be making sure that those people, the people in Carriacou and Petite Martinique, are given the kind of assistance that they need. And finally, Madam Speaker, as a new government, it is our responsibility to make sure that the ambassadors that are stationed in some of our friendly countries need to come home, so that will give us the opportunity to reappoint or appoint new people. And therefore there is a cost fixed to that. And it is important that we have sufficient funds so we can make sure that this happens. Madam Speaker, I rest my case for now, and I await a good debate on the matter.
I thank the Honourable Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Honourable Adrian Thomas, and the floor is open for debate. Honourable Nolan Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to make a few contributions on the bill before this Honourable House at this point in time. As the move of the bill indicate, this is a supplementary bill to meet further expenses for the operation of government for the remainder of this fiscal cycle. But Madam President, I just wanted to touch on a few of the matters that were raised, the particular areas, and also to bring some more information and some more clarity to what was presented, and also maybe to put forward some questions too as well, maybe so we can get some clarification. as we dive into this matter for this appropriation. Madam President, a number of comments were made by the leader of government business. I think the first one of them I just want to touch on, it had to do with the schools. And we understand the importance of investing in education, investing in our children, and hence the reason why significant investments have been made and must continue to be made in our school system going forward. And as presented in some of the documents, is over 100 schools. One of the challenges that the system have is that there is extensive work, and some of the schools do take a beating. You have hundreds of kids utilizing the facility on a daily basis, and as such, they are going to be wear and tear. And so hence the reason why those investments were made in our education system, and some schools in its entirety have to be rebuilt. And that is a continuous activity from time to time. Mention was made in the removal of the school fees. I don't know if in its entirety that is the case, but maybe I can just raise some things that maybe the Minister for Education may need to address. Because, as you know, all schools operate differently. They have their own policies, their own little operations, ways of raising revenue to sustain for certain expenses that may occur that will be difficult to treat it based on how monies are to be expended from government. And so schools find creative ways of meeting those finances. And I think is within that context, some of those fees have evolved. But I just say, for what is worth, there are still some that the ministry may have to look into. I know for a fact, if you want to wear a different jersey, you have to pay $5 to wear a different jersey. Some schools have, if you meet a minute late, they take $2 from the children lunch money, they have to pay $2. So a number of things take place. I don't know if those are things that they would want to address as well going forward, but I understand the context in which the leadership of the schools may be doing some of those things. And a number of reasons. If you forget your tie, there is a charge for that, and a number of things. So those are, I think, operational matters that they may want to look into. And with the view of letting the public know, giving the public the feeling that there is no charge at all at the school system level for persons. So I just raise that for what it's worth. As regards to the GDB loan initiatives, the one for full-time workers, the special loan for full-time workers, and of course the loan for low housing income. We, Madam President, at the time in government, see these initiatives as very critical, and as such, hence the reason why those decisions were made after our initial appropriation for the 2022. Because of things that were taking place. You have a number of issues with inflation, a lot of issues with COVID, and that were impacting persons in a real way. So as government, you will find at times you have to take initiatives to address matters as they arise. And so when you present a budget, it doesn't necessarily mean that that budget can stand. And your budget should not be rigid in such a way, but it should be able to reflect what is taking place in the country at the time. And so adjustment and changes are going to be required. So I hear that we have been knocked as if we didn't appropriate. If there is anything I'm talking about, is that. So I want to ask early, what justification would my colleagues come when they come with the first supplementary appropriation bill sometime after June next year, please God. So let's see how that goes. Let's see how that goes. If they don't come with any, well then I think that will be good for the country. Madam President, the issue of pensions and gratuity has been a long-standing issue for this country. And I think almost every family or homes have been affected in some way by this. And this issue transcends beyond political parties, and it is something that has to be addressed. And my colleague from the labor movement on this side has continued, and also the former president is one of those persons who championed the cause for this issue. This is a vexing issue, and I am proud to say that the New National Party government is the only government that took any action to address this matter. And the facts is there to bear that the New National Party government did take action in that regard. While we have not gone far enough, but we did make that initiative to get this addressed. So I just want to underscore that, to say that we have always supported addressing this issue. So we look forward to the government addressing this issue going forward. We are going to provide all the support that we can from our end to support this initiative, because it's not going to be an easy task. Not at all. On the matter of infrastructure, Madam President, infrastructure is a critical sector for this country, as it impacts a number of homes, number of families, businesses, through every sector. And we have been raising concerns of some of the critical projects. And I don't want to, and sometimes you get the feeling that there is a feeling at the other side that we are nitpicking or knocking. But in one breath, Madam President, you cannot tout success in 4 months and then afterwards complain when we ask about certain things that are not done. I mean, it goes, you can't have a cake and eat it. So that is something that we need to underscore. And the whole issue of the Molyneux Landscape area is one that is much more than that. It's the impact, the negative impact that it has had from the time it occurred to this day. And projects are dynamic. And we have followed the project cycle in terms of getting to where we are now. Significant work has been gone into for us to get to this point. We have worked speedily as much as possible as we can. So our call is not a call to in any way talk about what we have done, but our call is a call to speed up, to ease the burden that road users have to contend with on a daily basis, especially the busmen, because as we know, cost of living parts, it's a significant cost. There is also a major issue with persons living in St. Patrick's. After a certain time in the day, when the bus goes up, they don't come back. So you have workers who are finishing late in some of the business places. In some cases, they are stranded. And all because that when you get passed through Mount Morrison, you get up to St. Patrick's, you feel so comfortable that thinking about going back down, having to pass through and then come back again, we have that issue with the transportation sector. So I am well acquainted with it, and I believe it's within that context that's the reason why we are raising the concern of moving quickly as possible in addressing that road, the Molyneux Road. So I don't want any notion, to believe that we are doing that in any malicious way. It is a genuine concern. Madam President, the issue of the health, we have been the leader. The National Party have been the leader in investing in health in this country, and the records can bear that. When other governments fail to implement certain key projects, we would have gone ahead and done it. And we can speak proudly of the new hospital wing, where we have significant, and the Minister for Health can bear that we have serious upgrades, really good upgrades in terms of the services that are going to be coming out from the hospital wing. And we're talking about a new emergency area, casualty, and we also, most importantly for this country, the issue of dialysis being provided at the hospital in an upgraded way. I think those are significant achievements Madam President, if those initiatives are not transformational, I don't know what is. So I say this to say that those are things that we want to underscore as being very significant as investment in health in this country. I hear my colleague on the other side, Madam President, spoke of training for ministers. I saw in the document that the training is for the next 4 months. I'm not sure if the training had commenced as yet. I know that we have a budget being presented in November, I think, based on the schedule. So I don't know if this training is realistically be able to conclude this for this year. So I am just thinking that maybe there might be a suggestion that those funds should move on into the next fiscal cycle, as the leader of government has indicated that this training is so important as newbies, for want of a better word, which was used by him. So, Madam President, I just wanted to underscore those as some critical issues, and to say that the work of government will always continue. And the issue of appropriation should not be one that is seen as if there was a failure on the part of the Ministry of Finance and the previous government to allocate properly. And I could probably go further and say more, but I think I would leave that for your facilitators to handle the training. I don't want to start the training beforehand. All I can say is that is something that you'll contend with going forward. Madam President, the last thing that I want to raise, the issue of the debauching. And I think there is a serious misconception of what is the purpose of the program and how the program is perceived. And I say this, and oftentimes I hear comments, and the presenter of the bill indicated that that is something that they want to transform. I don't know how wanting to clear the streets to make sure our side or drains and things are cleared properly just for safe travels as something significant to transform. I don't know what about the program that is found or seen as being ill to this nation. I don't know. It's just ordinary people providing a service that is critical. I mean, I can tell you, I pass on roads right now. Within the next week or two, the bush from both sides will converge on some critical roads right now. And I say this, that the work of the program is very direct, is very simple, and is very necessary. And I don't know why there is this notion that there is something demeaning of having somebody clear our roads. I know that there are always talk about having community work, community efforts. Those are all good and well, but the practicality of it, in terms of keeping our roadways clean and safe, the only next best thing is probably to give it to a private contractor to be done. But the fact still remains, our roadways have to be cleared and maintained. That is a simple fact. How we call it, whatever you call it, the fact still remains that it has to be cleared. So I say this for what is what, and to again reiterate that our contribution in this honorable house towards the development of this country has and continue to be one that is meaningful. And our presentation here will reflect that in every way possible. I think there was one more thing that I wanted to touch on, Madam President, and it has to do with the whole issue of, mention was made of a fire engine for Carriacou. I think that is excellent. We welcome that. The last fire engine there is probably close to living out its useful life. And I think that is how it should be good. But we, the National Party government, have led the initiative in terms of improving the fire service. And as leader of government business can say for a fact that right now we're probably soon to open St. Davis getting the new fire department, and the fire engine should be coming for St. Davis too. I thought probably I might take the opportunity to mention that, but I think he's saying Lord Carriacou. I know probably because I'm here, that is why he's saying Lord Carriacou, Madam President. But nonetheless, you never know, sometimes he's already dead. Nonetheless, Madam President, I just want to say, to underscore the fact that we have been investing in those critical areas. And it has been a mandate for us to ensure that we have proper fire response throughout this entire state. And that is something that we have endeavored to do. So I'm happy that this initiative is continuing because in the interest of every single person throughout this country. So, Madam President, with these few contributions, I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do so in this honorable house.
I thank the Honorable Senator Nolan Cox. Thank you for your contribution. Other speakers? I see the Honorable Senator Gloria Thomas Samuel has requested the floor. You have the floor, Senator.
Madam President, I rise to support the supplementary appropriation bill. The appropriation bill is essential at this time for the effective functioning of government. Coming from the COVID situation, we are all aware of the impact which this dreaded pandemic have had on the lives and the livelihoods of our people. Many people have lost their jobs and their livelihoods, their income. This has been severely affected. SEED has served to assist people to cope. There was also a stimulus package that was put in place to offset some of the fallout of the COVID. The package, we believe, was not evenly distributed, and so many persons were still left out of receiving support. With the war in Ukraine, there has been increasing prices in goods and services the world over, and the effects we have also felt here in Grenada. And so the government has decided that there must be an increase in the assistance given to families to help them to cushion the effects. This government is a caring government that has pledged to put people first and provide opportunities for all. And so, Madam President, of special interest and concern is Carriacou. Over the years, Carriacou has been left out of the SEED program. But the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs has decided to include Carriacou and Petite Martinique at this time so that the residents on the Sister Isle who are in need will get some form of financial support, just as people on the mainland. And so, Madam President, a total amount of 9.1 million is requested for the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs. 8 million to increase SEED's benefits, assisting burial, medical and transportation, and 1.1 million to accommodate payments to SEED beneficiaries in Carriacou. Madam President, with this structured plan in place, I fully give my support to the supplementary appropriation bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. Yes. There could easily be a migration into Carriacou, Senator Cox. They're getting a fire engine, they're getting social development in the tune of $1 million. Carriacou is on the agenda. Other contributions? Yes, Senator Rahman, if I see correctly. Thank you, Honorable Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to ask about some clarification on the St. John's Flood Control Project. First of all, I'd like to say that I recognize the importance of this supplementary budget seeking the assistance, because we know in the private sector that the prices of materials have changed. And a large portion of this budget is for capital projects, I've noticed. And for example, we've noticed that steel, the price has doubled. So it is expected that they would have to ask. But my particular question is with regard to the St. John's Flood Control Project. That $11,500,000, if it would see it to completion, and if that completion would be along the cemetery, because I noticed that at the bottom of the cemetery I have a property that is adjacent, and I noticed that when it floods, the water comes in at the bottom of the cemetery there, and no work has yet commenced on that part. So I'd just like to get some clarification on that. And one other thing, if I may, with regard to the CDB, GDB, Grenada Development Bank. I want to know if the project for the small businesses, which is the 1% loan, a concessionary loan that was given under the last administration and supported during this administration as well, even though they're only 4 months in office. I want to know if there is provision for that program to continue. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, thank you very much. On the issue of the St. John's River, that 11 million should complete the project. I cannot guarantee you that the concern that you are raising in regards to the end of the project there, I cannot, I cannot give you that information. But as I said to you when I was dealing with Senator Sinclair issue, we are trying to analyze this situation, and we are trying to gather as much information as possible. A lot of the information is not hands-on. We have to at least put it together and really look for it. Some are in disarray, some are, reasonable, but I would not be able to furnish you with that information at this point in time. So, Madam President, I promise to, as soon as we have the next sitting, we will make sure that we have that information and give you all the details that we can put our hands on to make sure that the other side of the house is fully aware of what is going on with St. John's, with the St. John's project. The Senator in the tongue of St. George, I'm sure that she will want to talk about that project a little later on in the debate. The question of the GDB issue, again, I will have to sort that information for you, and I promise that the next sittings I will furnish you with the detail, but I cannot give you that at this point in time.
I thank the Honorable Senator. Debate continues. Senator Lacrette.
Madam President, honorable members, I also rise to support the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022. I am in support of the bill simply because It forms part, an integral part, that is, of government's budgetary allocation as we seek to lay out a transformational agenda. I also support the bill simply because my Honorable Prime Minister has seen it fit to ask me to sit over, as the policymaker, the emergency sector, or the sector that never sleeps. Much work to be done in that sector, all of our institutions across the Tri-Island state. Therefore, the categorical representations of 1, Princess Alice Hospital, Princess Royal Hospital, Community Health Services, General Hospital, and also General Administration begs the little bit over $2 million appropriation that we received. Seeing that a number of our capital projects are funded, we are well on our way in some areas to ensure that the infrastructural development that is needed on many of our facilities is done. 1 or 2 by the end of the year, and there are some, Madam President, it will go into 2023. It's just the reality and beyond, based on our medium-term and long-term strategic imperatives. Yes? So as a result of that, the appropriation for the categories is quite huge, simply because, for example, when it comes to general administration, the human resource capacity, Madam President, if any one of us fall along here right now, God forbid, and have to be rushed to the general hospital, based on your condition, I am not quite sure whether or not, if it's a heart condition or some other condition, we will be able to maybe stabilize you, but at some point we may have to fly you out, because some essential specialist services are critically missing from our health sector. It's the reality and it's the truth. So as it relates to general administration, Ministry of Health ministerial complex staffing, as well as outsourcing the specialist professionals so that we can fill those capacity gaps, it's going to cost us some. But we must go back to some degree of training, training of our nurses, which is being done currently at the St. George University. And we have to ensure that in other specialist areas, we build the capacity so that we can have the human resource buffer that we need for the health sector to be robust moving forward, 2023 and beyond. So I rise to support the bill from an infrastructural perspective, from a human resource capacity perspective, and also from an institutional strengthening perspective where the healthcare sector is concerned. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator David Lacrette. No, I mean Jonathan Lacrette. That David was deliberate, you know. Senator Neelan Franklin, you have this floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to ask a couple questions. It is not unfamiliar for sitting administration to request an appropriation, as indicated by my colleague, Senator Cox. However, it is important to ask questions about the content of the request, and that is what I seek to do at this point. In the approved estimates for 2022, the fiscal year 2022, there was an initial budgetary allocation of $333.8 billion for capital expenditure, and the media review document shows an estimated outturn of $300.9 million, in essence indicating a savings of $32.9 million, a difference of $32.9 million. It is on that premise I asked the question, of the $117 million being requested for capital expenditure in the supplementary bill, is it necessary given the $32.9 million savings. Additionally, Madam President, there is a request for $77 million for the current expenditure side. The major review document also indicates that there's an estimated saving on 4 line items there: employee compensation, wages, salaries and allowances, goods and services, and interest payments, each having shown a decrease of 2.6, 3.1, 6.2, and 6.2 respectively. So in aggregate, that accounts for just about $28 million in savings again. And I ask, is it necessary for the request of the $77 million on the current side, the current expenditure side, given the fact that these savings are in some respect significant? An interesting observation of the request, the supplementary, the new ministry, the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, MIT. It has a nice abbreviation. There was a promise of removing contract work and whatnot, but we see an opportunity here for contract work to be removed or eliminated as promised, and there's a significant allocation under that ministry, a request rather, for contract work. So I would like some clarity on that. Also, before I close, there was, on the capital side, the honorable member indicated that there is an just over $88 million request. For the sake of it, I would ask the question. A couple of weeks ago, I saw 2 members in the community of Brizan, where I'm from, discussing the issue with a road there. And they indicated that that road, they don't want that road to be that of Molyneux. So I asked the question, if that initiative is also considered in the $88 billion, it would be good if it is, and I will be happy, and I'm sure the people of Brizan will be happy if that has been considered rather. And lastly, as it relates to the removal of the school fees as indicated, it is a good initiative, but one would think logically that if the schools no longer have that opportunity to collect, government would have to step in to buffer. And I asked the question of the $2.21 million requested for the recurrent side of the budget for the Ministry of Education, if that was considered to buffer the removal of the school fees there. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your questions, Senator Franklin. Perhaps we can get other questions and consolidate those. Senator Douglas, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to support most of the content of the Appropriation Bill 2022. Madam President, with your permission, please let me first take the opportunity to compliment the government for continuing most of the projects and programs that were conceptualized and initiated by the NNP government. Thank you for that. We can all agree that the NNP administration did an exceptional job managing the finances of our country. Because as the current administration honestly said, and again I commend them for that, they met a substantial amount of funds in the Treasury, which is now contributing to the continuation of the country's development and the payments of recurrent expenditure. However, Madam President, please permit me now to comment regarding the funds requested by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to recall our citizens who have been serving abroad as diplomats. Madam President, here we are today allocating $1 million. It's a lot of money, you know. In these hard times, it's a lot of money. And we have so many important things to do in our country today to continue building and developing. Just asking for that $1 million to recall our diplomats. Couldn't we use that $1 million or some of it to provide life-saving medicine or other vital needs, especially for the poor and the vulnerable? I'm asking. Madam President, grant me the permission to please ask, and I want us to think about it deeply as colleagues here. Is it really necessary? And maybe the answer is yes, I don't know, but we need to ask ourselves the question. Is it necessary to spend that $1 million now to bring back diplomats? It is an undeniable fact that over many, many years, this recall has been a practice. We could all agree to that. Because somehow every new government does not feel comfortable with its own citizens, our own people, appointed by another government to continue the work. And we need to ask ourselves the question, why? Some say that they might sabotage the new government, but if you sabotage the government, you sabotage Grenada. You sabotage the entire nation, so what benefit it has? Others may say that they must be rooted out and isolated, but why? It's about nation building and representation of our nation, our little Grenada that is just a pin on the map, you know. Madam President, the question to us as Grenadians right now, and I'm very passionate about that, today, whether or not this policy was done in the past, whether it is still necessary, or if it makes it right, is it worthwhile? When will this practice end? Because it cost us as a nation. We all agree that a government has the right. But what are the implications in this exercise or non-exercise of that right in a small country as ours, where everyone is almost related and knows everyone? I further ask, Madam President, please allow me, what yardstick is used of measurement or historical analysis that advises this practice, which instructs us that diplomats, whether politically appointed or those who are called career diplomats, cannot work under several governments? So we need to assess ourselves. We need to make sure that we are assessing, our diplomats and making the right decision, not just for them, but for our country. Why are they now labeled as indecent people with no common sense? And I will further state, why are they insulted and referred to, pardon me, as people who were picked up by the side of the road and put into a microwave, then came out and called diplomats? So when I listen to these things, and other people are listening to this, it hurts because our words are very powerful. And we have to be very mindful of the words. Am I asking who said it? Yes, it was said in one of your meetings in New York by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's there. So, Madam President, again, I just want us to think about this and see if it really makes sense. And if it makes sense, as I said, the government has to do what they need to do, but we're talking about monies here. So let's make sure that we spend wisely, because time is going to get tougher. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank Senator Douglas for your questions. Senator David Andrew.
Madam President, I rise to give my full support to this appropriation bill. But even before I expound on why I do so from the figures themselves, I take the opportunity to respond to a few of the questions and concerns raised by members, honorable members on the other side that pertain to the ministry that I have the mandate to give leadership, policy leadership to. So let me start. I think Honorable Cox raised some concerns about student fees, and we are happy to indicate that schools are not debarred from using all of the methods that they have traditionally used to raise funds, whether it's through their alumni associations, past pupil associations, or they have, as they have been accustomed. What we want to make sure, what this policy position emphasizes, is that these funds will not be raised via the medium of charging the students, their parents or guardians. Right? So that part is eliminated. What we want to emphasize too is that schools are indeed authorized to, in fact it's expected, and that was communicated to schools, that in the case where a particular deliverable is supposed to be given to a student, as in a branded PE uniform, and the senator did make mention to a particular jersey or shirt or something of that sort, then the anticipation is that a fee will be paid and borne by the parent or guardian. But in relation to general fees, that we call security, over the years we've grown accustomed to hearing about security fees, lab fee, games fee. These fees that have been traditionally approved by the Ministry of Education have now been withdrawn. And so, yes, we anticipate that if there is a particular deliverable that the school will make available to our students, that there will be a charge. On the matter of having removed the fees, I think Senator Nealon Franklin asked whether or not the state would step in. That has already been done. In fact, we took time to consult with our principals, to consult with the school fraternity, and to ensure that we did not leave any school in a worse off position than they were in prior. So the ministry in previous years had approved the games fee, lab fee, security fees, and in primary school it came up to about $15 a term, and at the secondary level it came up to as much as $25 a term. And so we've moved to have that payment made to schools per child based on the number of students registered to the schools. As I speak, in fact, the cabinet conclusion has already been made, the submission was made, the conclusion has already been given, and we have moved to pay those fees, calculated as I've outlined, $75 per child at the secondary level per annum, $45 at the level of primary, $45 per child per annum at the level of the primary school students. And I'm pleased to indicate that we have also started to do that at a rate of about $30 per preschooler. And along with that, I'm very pleased to report to this Honorable House that for the first time in the history of our school setting in the education sector, we have introduced the payment of a subvention to unattached preschools. That has never been in the case before. We've had primary schools and secondary schools receiving subventions from the state. That's been as far back as we know. But for the first time, we've introduced a subvention for unattached preschools. We recognize how important early childhood education is, and we want to make sure we give our educators in that setting the best opportunity to deliver the quality service that will see them starting in the best possible way. So we are happy to report that to this Honorable House today. Right. I think Senator Cox asked about the Molinet project, and I'm aware that the project, if I'm not mistaken, should have started this week. Should be starting this week. Should have started. Yes, this week. So the call for haste and urgency has been heeded probably well before it was made, because the project is underway. All right. Now, let me shift my attention to the issue of why I support the appropriation bill. There are two major sections in this bill under the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture that merits our support. So we are aware that we had a long-standing TAMCC issue where lecturers, there were outstanding fees, and there was industrial unrest related to one, retroactive payments, and two, increased salaries. In fact, reports were that the lecturers and officers at TAMCC were functioning with salaries from 2012 levels, right? And this we knew. TAMCC being our premier tertiary level institution on the island, we couldn't afford to have that kind of industrial unrest continue. And so we moved in negotiation with the unions, we instituted the council, meetings with the principal and other stakeholders at TAMCC. We moved to resolve this. There are still some outstanding issues and timelines to be dealt with, but we moved to have a measure of the payments made and to facilitate the increase. We moved to have the increases paid. But to facilitate the increases ongoing, there is a need to increase the subvention to the college. Because what we've just done, we've increased the payments, and that means additional expenditure would have to be put forward towards TAMCC. And that is reflected here in this appropriation to the tune of $2,217,248. So we indulge your support for that. Additionally, there is the figure of $2.5 million to facilitate the construction or the refurbishment, construction of the Simoon Cultural Center. Now, we are happy to admit that was a project that started under the former administration, and Senator Douglas did commend us for continuing many of the projects. And by all means, as an administration, if it's good, we keep it. If it's working well and in the interest of the country, we keep it. And we have no doubts in our minds that the cultural center is a necessity. Right now, most of our major cultural shows and festivals take place in our sporting grounds. Either Kirani James Athletic Stadium or the Queen's Park or somewhere else. And that results in significant damage to much of the sporting infrastructure across the island. So we want to see the completion of this project to create a home for much of our cultural activities. And so we are happy to support the $2.5 million to facilitate continuation of this project. Hopefully it brings it to completion. I'm not sure I can tell you what the exact budget is at this point, but we are happy to advance these figures. And so having said that, Madam President, I offer fullest support to this appropriation bill. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Senator Andrews. Thank you. Senator Roderick Sinclair.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to make some contributions on behalf of the farmers, fisher folks, to whom I represent in this honorable house. From a snapshot, bearing in mind, of course, you have uncertainties and rebudgeting and all those circumstances as explained by the presenter of the bill. I have some comments.
Excuse me,
of
Senator.
Course,
I have heard you in the Senate before. I can't hear you now.
You're not hearing me?
Not audibly, so kindly, if I get closer
Maybe
to
I'm at the angle, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Thank you so kindly.
Okay, that's why I'm hearing myself instead. If I'm intimidated? No. I feel at home. I feel at home very much. So, a few things. One, the issue of the nurses, I think that popped out to me because we know the situation with our healthcare, and we have been losing a lot of our nurses and so on. So I was happy to see there is movement there. I was happy for that. I was also happy regarding issues of the fire tenders and so on. I think that is good to act swiftly because we can lose much more for that. And even if I may be silent on some, it doesn't mean that I'm unhappy, but I'm just raising those I'm extra happy about. The issue, of course, with the pension, and we don't want to speak too much on this because we know our Labour Senator will expound more, but of course, understanding the far-reaching effect of this. And if you look at, and I always say, you know, a lot of teachers, in particular public servants, used to be retiring, you know, because most would start working maybe at 18, 19. And by the time they reach 45, 50 maybe, they're already retired. They would go into a fishing boat, into some farming, some other activities while they're still active. And of course, coming this time with the pension, of course, most of them might maybe a little bit extra aged, but the point is that they would get something in their hands, and of course others who can see the opportunity can now take this, and we can see an influx of new entrepreneurs, particularly in those. So I think that trend, not just for now, 60 million now, but 60 plus more million in 2023, so that others who want to come and involve in the productive sector can so do. So I wanted to comment on that. Regarding the police, you know, I always like to have an issue of the police, because when it comes to pretty harassing, that is perhaps one of the biggest problems we have in this country. And I see an allocation for new recruits and uniforms and other things. It's nice, but the issue we still face is the farmers continue to lose. And whilst this is good, by the time these recruits finish training in the next 6 to 8 months, the money that we even invest in for this year might be lost many times by our farmers. And so I say this to say that when you look at all the budget and all the balance of payment at the end of the year, it's projected to be a loss of, I think, $1.5 million. So meaning that in the scheme of $1 billion budget, that is minuscule. And I believe that some consideration could have been given. Because when you listen, almost everything is about this pretty lasting. And whilst, yes, we see the urgency to train new recruits of 70-something, I believe that we can still go back to the drawing board and find another 100,000 somewhere to help to fight this cause towards the end of the year. I don't think it's a big asking. And I will tell you why. Because we have lost significant number of recruits, not recruits, pretty larceny task force officers. See, I get confused sometimes. To the police. Because I will tell you, Madam President, don't be surprised that at least 25% or 30% of the current period of larceny task force members might apply to go in the same training to be a police officer, such that the benefits, the pension, and all of those things can be guaranteed as a police officer. So I've been saying over and over, and you cannot do it right now in the supplemental, but we need to have a restructuring of the police force. such that, as in Trinidad and in Jamaica, the pre-delasting task force, they are regular officers from a regular unit where we could really act and protect our farmers from the losses that they continue to suffer. So this is very important. In fact, I see the issue of uniform and I smile, because a few weeks ago I was in Sotez, right in High Street, and I saw a pre-delasting officer looking nice in a green uniform. But she was, I think Dawn is the correct name, she had on her a nice reflective vest, calling traffic 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I looked around and there was no farms. There was no pre-delasting going on around there. There were persons crossing the street. So I bring this in that thinking for us to really think and see how someone. In fact, I say this to say that we must not lose sight, Madam President, that if we take the budget document of 2022, despite all the changes and circumstances which we all understand, there are several other initiatives that should have been started that have not even started yet. So where is this money? We know budget sometimes it doesn't mean that the money is there. But if I say, let us suppose the money was there, where is that money? So there should be some pool of money sitting that we can use. Because we are not asking now to be using those monies for those supplements. We're asking for new money. So I'm saying in that whole context, they should have been able to still go and find some money somewhere that might be able to show some warrant or something. It's not too late. But in light of that same discussion, Madam President, the fact that as a leader of government business clearly stated, of 33%, if I heard that right, implementation rate. And I could understand that, because my questions earlier could not have been answered because of the same issues. As he said, things is all over the place. To put it together and understand, it's true. So I also was looking, well, hold on. The Ministry of Fisheries, Madam President, the Ministry of Agriculture, Madam President, and maybe the other ministries too, but I don't keep an eye there, looking at new business, have vacancies that need to be filled. So I was looking at maybe we can also find some because these are positions that exist, they are not filled, some of them have nobody in it. So that money that might have been allocated is not even spending. So if we could have at least find to fill some of this between now and December so we can able to get some of these things going, I would have liked to see this in here. And I don't think that is new money. Right? You will say, well, it's not supplemental because the money was there. So then we would end up with maybe an extra surplus downstream because it never used at all. But we are worried about that. Also, I believe, and we believe, the issue of not feeder road, I want to make this clear. Because feeder road is what caused the rise of real estate. They are main roads. Hardly of them, few of them go to any farm. They would bring you to maybe close to what we call a farm road, whereby, and well explained by leader of government business, it's not necessarily you have some vehicle that could go there, four-wheel drive, could drive on that road, so you don't need no fancy asphalt. Some binders and those things like that. And I believe that, notwithstanding the heavy rains that we have now, bearing in mind all of those, some consideration again could have been given to able to at least address some of these roads so that we can know where we're getting food come December. And that's a different discussion and we'll talk about later on. So with this said, these are my basic contribution to this, and it's well placed. We understand the context of the request, and whilst we do have, and I would say, whilst you do have my support and our support, these things will still have us with a heavy heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. Other contributions? Senator Joseph, Claudette Joseph.
Madam President, if it pleases you, I rise to lend support to the bill proposed and to say that the passage of the bill is necessary to carry out the functions of government for the remainder of the year. As Senator Norland Cox indicated, supplementary appropriations are quite common in our system of government, but particularly so in this case, given the event that occurred on June 23rd and the resultant change in dispensation. Also, considering, and my friends on the other side will agree, I am sure, considering the spending spree that occurred immediately prior to June 23rd. They will no doubt agree that some expenses were incurred which were not allocated for in the initial presentation of the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year 2022. You know, when those dates are announced, humans tend to go a little crazy. So there was a change after the people spoke, and since government is a continuum, we are obligated to make good on the contracts entered into immediately before June 23rd, including some contracts which were actually not formally entered into, but which both parties began performing. And it fell to me in my role to advise government on what happens when the formalities are not yet done, but the parties mutually begin to act on what is agreed in principle. So that ties government's hands into honoring the obligations of our immediate predecessor, and that is particularly reflected in the sum requested under the infrastructure, the Ministry of Infrastructure, which in total compute to 88,575,533. Some of that would be as a direct result of the works undertaken in the final months of the immediate past administration. In fact, some of the works are ongoing. Some of the works, a lot in particular, are works that should have been done a long time ago, and that the public was calling to be addressed, but were not attended to. And, well, we know the nature of government. So all the calls, there was an attempt to answer as many of the calls as possible. and to deliver on as many of the promises as possible. So here we are with a bloated supplementary bill, particularly for the Ministry of Infrastructure. But Madam President, that's not the sum total of the requests made under the Ministry of Infrastructure. There are some initiatives of this administration because we are serious about the pledge we made to the people of Grenada to transform our country. And we invite and call on our colleagues on the other side to join with us and support us and work with us in the transformation effort. I guarantee you, such posture will not be inimical to your desire or your quest to once more form the government. It will reflect well on you to buy into the transformation agenda, because that's what the people of Grenada favored. So, in that regard, we will undertake such efforts as securing the fire tender for the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And by the way, let me say to you, the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, in the Honorable Tevin Andrew, you could not have picked a better advocate. He comes religiously to the cabinet every week and fights for Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Sometimes we had to tell him, take it easy, man, there are 14 other constituencies. So you have a great advocate to the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique in the Honorable Tevin Andrew. There are other efforts, including some that were not inspired by the June 23rd event, but that was started before. And as my brother and colleague, Senator David Andrew indicated, if it's good, we keep it. If it makes sense, we continue it. And so, for example, the renovation of some of the government buildings, these are matters that we are obliged to continue, because the reality is, in relation to some government buildings, there are issues of the health and safety of workers. And we want to do right by the workers of Grenada, to stand with the workers of Grenada, and to ensure that we provide for them a safe system of work in all regards. So particularly in the government buildings around the older buildings, you find there are issues with mold and that kind of thing. So a lot of the government buildings do need repair work so that the environment is better for the workers. Then we have another example is the flood mitigation project that's ongoing at the St. John's River. And both sides committed to the people of River Road and surrounding areas that we will take steps to alleviate that problem. And I know in particular, I campaign among them very heavily on that topic. The flood mitigation effort is quite, in some respect, a sad story, because as I understand it, some $49 or so million was secured way back by the previous NDC administration in 2012, 11 or 12, thereabout, to undertake that project. And it would have been a more aesthetically pleasing, a more comprehensive project. But the project was not pursued, or implementation rate being as it is, that was one of the projects that was not implemented by the incoming administration of 2013. And therefore the funds were lost because, you know, with the external donor and some lending agencies, if you don't use the funds within a specific time, you lose it. So those initial funds that were secured in between 2011 and 2012, those funds were lost and that project could not go on. And the previous government, sometime last year, or 2021, early 21, 22, not 22, late 2020, early 2021, I'm sorry, Madam President, the river came down. And I recall putting out a short video and a statement as the then NDC caretaker and calling on government to do something, account for the $49 million. And shortly after that, some months after that, the work started. It appeared to be a reaction to the call I made. For some reason, the people of Grenada have not been told that this project is in fact locally funded. And it is funded now in part by the National Transformation Fund. So I understand it, in part. So this appropriation now seeks to complete the project. Not in full. There are a couple other phases to go. There are 2 bridges to be done. And yes, Honorable Senator Rahman, work has to be done in the area by the mouth of the river that is affecting private property, including property belonging to your family. So that is something that has to be taken into account. As my learned friend indicated, I believe, but I cannot say with certainty, that the $11.5 million sought here now will cover that. But I know within the scope of works going forward, that issue is under consideration. We also are asking for approval for a sizable sum, $60 million, to pay retroactive pension. And that means people who have already retired from the service and have not been paid their pension, contrary to Section 93 of the Constitution. The court made pronouncements on the constitutionality of a law passed in 1983, the Pension Disqualification Act. The court made pronouncement on that law, declaring it unconstitutional in 1998, not 1988, 1998, and then again in 2010. But unfortunately, the workers of the country, they were forced to again literally drag the state to court for the court to pronounce a third time that the Pension Disqualification Act was indeed unconstitutional. And it means that people joining the service post April 4th, 1983 are entitled to be paid their pension under the 1958 law. And we indicated while we campaigned to win the hearts of Grenadians, pun intended, to abide by the ruling of the court. We could not see, after all the analysis that we did, the legal opinions sought and obtained, that any different result would come about even if the matter were appealed to the higher courts. So we committed to honoring the findings of the court. And our first step, therefore, is to pay the people who will be immediately entitled to enforcement of that judgment. That is the people who have already qualified for pension. Now remember, we were given a whole lot of reasons why the pension could not be paid. We had a long national address. We were given $450 million. All kind of figures were flouted about. There was no intention, based on the utterances of the prior administration, there was clearly no intention to pay that pension or to pay it anytime soon. And we set about putting systems in place and discussing the matter even before the election, indicating that in the event of a victory at the polls, this is something we must do. Because we, on this side, we stand for the rule of law, for democracy, and for the rights of our citizens as guaranteed by the supreme law. So we were not going to continue to entertain the flagrant disobedience of the Constitution. And we are very proud that what it took successive governments 38 years to try to do, and they failed, we sat and worked it out and had a proposal for the unions in 8 days. I'm not exaggerating. My colleagues and I got sworn in on the 1st of July, and on the 8th of July, I sat with the Honorable Prime Minister and my colleague, the Minister for Economic Development and Planning, and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, together with all of the unions represented, and presented a proposal which we worked assiduously on in 8 days to present to the unions for the payment of the pensions. Now I think colleagues on both sides in this House, such a feat deserves a table knock. So we made the proposal to the unions, and we gave the unions 30 days to review it, analyze it, work back the figures, tell us if we're right, tell us if there was a better model they would propose, tell us if we made any mistakes in computing the figure. 30 days, come back with your input, and then we move forward. And, well, I imagine that they looked and scrutinized and they found no flaws because they didn't come back. So we are moving forward, and the Pension Secretariat is just down the road from here, and we look very much forward to making initial payments on November 30th and going forward. That said, we also raised the issue of contract work and how unfair contract work is, whether it's taking place in the public sector or the private sector, and the need to regularize as much as we can contract workers. But let's be straight. We're going to be straight with the nation. Contract work and pension reform must go together, because we commit to pay the retroactive pension, and we are doing so. We understand the import of the ruling of the court, but so as not to do severe damage, perhaps even irreparable damage to our economy in the long run, we must work out a pension plan going forward that's sustainable. Because as it stands now, when people retire, they are entitled to NIS, that's public servants I mean, they are entitled to NIS plus government pension. And government pension is a non-contributory pension, which means the government alone pays everything into the pension fund, plus under the NIS law, the government pays 6% into the NIS, into the National Insurance Fund. So going forward, that will be a really hefty sum that the IMF and everybody else have already warned is not sustainable going forward as it is. Plus, if we regularize contract workers across the board without at the same time treating with pension reform, what do? We bloat the public service. We expand the public service, and in so doing, the amount of people who would be eligible for pension. So we call on our friends in the labor movement to sit with us and work out an acceptable mode going forward, where everyone will be happy, where we will not leave an unbearable financial burden for those who come after us, and where those who retire going forward will not have to retire into poverty. So I look forward to Mr. President, my learned friend, and his colleagues in the union. When I say Mr. President, I mean Mr. President of the GTUC, Madam President, and his colleagues in the union, working with us to come up with a solution that the workers will be happy with, that the government coffers will be happy with, and that the people of Grenada in general will be happy with. And that, in the case of contract workers, a solution that we can relatively easily translate to the private sector. Because the government, in a sense, has set a bad example. The private sector is doing it as well. And people on contract in the private sector can't move forward, they can't qualify for loans, they can't do a whole lot of things because they do not have security of tenure. So we look forward to the support, and we look forward to paying this sum. Just want to answer a couple of questions from right. So, my friend, I hope in the explanation I just gave my learned friend, Mr. Franklin, Senator Franklin, I hope in the explanation I just gave in relation to regularizing contract workers, I have answered your question as to why some of the workers who are retained by the MIT, the new MIT ministry, are actually on contract. There's another thing. On attaining office, we met some arrangements that government had already made, our predecessor had already made with people for contracts. And the terms had been agreed, but the contracts had not yet been signed. And in most instances, we must act with decency and acknowledge government as a continuum. And if we have no good reason for not proceeding to sign a contract that our predecessor entered into, we sign the contract. Right? New people coming into the service, into the service, whether it's MIT or any other ministry, by and large, they enter on contract. Because we cannot go regularizing some and not the other. We cannot, for example, in fairness, bring new people into the service as established, and then you have contract workers already in the service, 10, 15, some 20 years on contract, and we're telling them, wait till we regularize, while we hire new people straight in because we say we're going to regularize. So I hope I'm clear, and you see the propriety with which we are attempting to treat with this matter. because it would be reasonable, if you're regularizing contract workers, to regularize first the ones who are in the system and have been on contract for a long time, not the new people coming. So I hope that explains why it is being done like that in some respects. And finally, Madam President, the issue of the diplomats. My learned friend, Senator Douglas. When administration changes, by and large, the diplomats are recalled. That's a fact of life. Because unfortunately, over the last 30 or so years, we've moved away from hiring career diplomats. And in some instances, career diplomats were recalled for no good reason except that a particular leader felt they weren't supporting. And what we have is when the diplomats are recalled, they are replaced by party hacks. So naturally, when there's a change, and it's not unique to Grenada, yeah? It's not unique, it happens all over. The diplomats have to be recalled. What we want to do, or what we are doing in this administration, is treating our Grenadian servants, workers, public servants, with dignity and respect. And when we are going to repatriate our diplomats, we must make sure and do so properly. Properly recall them, give them some time to transition, give them some time to pack up all their belongings, and to come back home decently and in a dignified way. And there is precedent for this, Madam President. In 2008, 2009, I did a case for a diplomat who was yanked from her posting in a very demoralizing manner. And it cost her more than twice as much as it should have cost her to get here. And government didn't take care of her well. And on her behalf, I sued the government. And we got a nice judgment. So there's precedent, and I know the precedent well. So I am particularly careful in advising my government to bring people back home properly and with dignity. Right? They are our people. So that's why it will cost some money. Some of them being out long, they have a whole house. Some of them have all the furniture and this, that. Some of them have to come in a container, a small container. So it's actually costly, and the cost of travel, as you know, has gone up a lot. Yeah, well, we have some foreigners. We ain't paying money for them, though. Yeah. The money is mainly to bring back our own people. Right? So what we've done is a total recall. And it may or may not be that some people would be reappointed. Because as you say, Senator, we are trying to move away from this sort of insularity that has plagued us. We're trying to get the best people for the job, not necessarily the people who support us best. So, Madam President, with all of that said, I support the bill, and I ask for the support of all of my colleagues on the other side. I think that only leaves you, I'm picking on you today, that only leaves you, Senator Lewis, and I expect you to support the bill, or at least the part dealing with the pension. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Joseph. Senator Andre Lewis, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President. And I am obligated to inform my good colleagues, we are very good friends, colleagues, on the other side, that for a moment, just a part of my fellow colleague Senator Joseph's presentation. For a moment, I thought I was listening to the former administration on the question of, I know that the court has spoken on what our pension entitlement is. I know the court has spoken on the aspect of its constitutionality. And I'm also fully aware that Section 29(5) of our Employment Act does not make any relationship between the types of contract, in terms of permanency of contract, and any of the suggestions, and I'm saying suggestions, or pronouncements made by my colleague on the other side. So this is just a late sort of addition to my comments, but it is important because it will be recorded in the answer. And because the world is listening, and because our members are listening, and because we are clear as to what led to the fight over the many years that led to dock salaries, which I'll come to in a while, and you must be commended for all that has been done. So I'm putting that on the table. We cannot go back there. And we cannot set ourselves up in person to sort of inform our members that there is something to be worked out as to amending the pension. That I will address later, because there is a motion to that effect, to give support to all that has been told to us. And because my friend to you, Madam President, Senator Joseph, made mention of a meeting that we engaged the Prime Minister in, I may not have spoken about it because it was an engagement between the unions and the associations. But because my dear Senator made mention of it, and to indicate that I was present, I will also indicate that that commitment was given, that apart from paying the retroactive pension in relation to once someone retires now and going forward will be paid. That meeting, my reflection was on the 7th of July. I stand corrected by my good friend. That is the 8th of July. So for the avoidance of doubt, lest it be said that I remain silent, and they say silence is consent, which I do not agree with. Silence can never be consent. But there is this perception in our culture. I want it to be clear that we are not going back to the days of the past administration that sought to change our pension, that caused us to march the streets in the rain, thunder, and lightning, that caused our leaders to be questioned and arrested, that caused our members' salaries to be docked. We are of the opinion, based on the judgment and the acceptance of the government, that these days are long behind us. So that's the pension. Now the question of permanency, that commitment that was given, that workers will be made permanent, we expect this to be fulfilled and not to be traded one for the other. That was never part of the conversation. That sounds more like my good colleague here, and I will single him out because this is about the nation's business. I mean, he is a bit more refined than one of our colleagues from the other side who really, went after us and spoke about there is no legal obligation. Yes? And we are doing what is right. And go to court. We were told go to court by the then administration. Go to court. We have done that, and we are very happy that we have a judgment in our favor. I also think it is quite feasible to make a number of workers permanent, especially, and we can start in bites, for instance, in the healthcare, as our nurses. And there's nothing which says that all workers have to be made permanent at the same time. We will love that. We will love to wake up a day and hear a pronouncement that everyone who has served beyond, let us say 3 months, as an example, because under the labor code, it says that 3 months for skilled and 1 month for unskilled. But we also know that within the public service, that there are other regulations that may speak about a longer period for certain types of work. And we are seeing that once all these conditions are met, the workers ought to be made permanent. We will love to hear it, but we also recognize that there will be some issues that may need to be addressed. But there is no justification that can be given in our view as to why our nurses in particular cannot be made permanent. The same cry that we made in the past as to how the security forces have been treated in terms of police officers, for instance. There was no application of the attrition policy to our security forces. And if we were to treat our healthcare professionals in the same level as we treat our security forces, and I really do believe you, through you, Madam President, that our senator here in charge of health and the others are committed to our healthcare professionals. I'm saying that we can take a small bite and start. And it will give the commitment to our members, to our healthcare professionals, that you have security of tenure. This is something that has burned us. And to be hearing right now that there is some kind of conditionality telling me that I will have to give up something in order to get the workers permanent. I do not want to conclude, but I'm saying that for a moment I was wondering if I was listening or if there was no change in administration, to be quite frank with you. Having said that, on the question of the pension in the supplementary bill, the $60 million, that is heartily welcome. As we speak, it is quite possible, subject to correction, and it would not be much far off, that it may be roughly 400 people thereabout. 400, give or take, you may have, in terms of your attractive pension, and you may have a number of people who died during that period, I think might be 85 to now. And if we're speaking about 60 million, if we were to use it on an average basis, it speaks about roughly $150,000 per person. Now, obviously, it is average, so some will be more, some will be less, based on your salary. And that is really good for economy. That is extremely good for economy. Think about what this current administration has done by immediately accepting the judgment of the court. And the judgment of the court, I wish to repeat, has nothing to do with retroactive pension. It has to do with pension. Retroactive means that had the laws not been violated, people would have received their payments, and those who are going will continue to receive. Psychologically, for our Grenadian workers and for our Grenadian people, whether you're a public officer or not, that was a relief. We felt that veil lifted. We felt that veil lifted because we know that a number of our members and their families, the level of poverty that visited them after retirement. And this is highly commendable. We look forward with high levels of anticipation that come the 30th of November, once these monies have been paid, what it will mean for economy. What it will mean for, as I said, the psychological makeup of our people. But I want to go further, through you, Madam President, and use this opportunity to ask us as leaders, to ask us in the labor movement, to ask the government, to ask the opposition, to ask all of us to counsel our people. Because when this money comes into our hand, especially because we are working class, many times we are not accustomed to this kind of money in our hands, and we tend to believe that money can't finish. And I'll give you an example through you, Madam President. Just bear with me one moment. Only last week, we were engaged in those sort of discussions. And we have workplaces where our members sometimes go home with $200 and something, $300 and something $1,000. And all of a sudden, the age is no longer upon them. And I hope you understand where I'm going. They are no longer elderly. They get young. And things that they wanted, they think that that money can get everything. And we have seen it, Madam President, where sometimes within 6 months to a year, $200 and something $1,000, $100 and something $1,000 disappears. and they walk up our union steps asking for assistance. And we have to try to assist. So I'm making this call for us in the labor movement to engage our members in terms of money management. There are a number of unions that has already been doing that over the years, that where we get the age of our members, and in the last 5 years leading up to retirement, we engage them into pre-retirement and money management. But we know that this is a short period, because the decision to pay, or the court ruling came at the end of March 29th or 30th. And therefore, there isn't that long period of time for those sort of engagement. But we know that we ought to be doing it, and therefore we are calling our members to be extremely... We don't want to tell you what to do with your money. So I want to make that separation, because people are adults. But there's nothing wrong in advising ourselves as to the possible pitfalls that can come if we do not manage properly. Because we know a number of our members have mortgages. A number of our working class people. And permit me, Madam President, when I listen to our new senators give a background of themselves, it further reinforces that thought process, that the vast majority of us have similar experiences in terms of the way we grew up. And it reinforces the point of the commitment that we need to make to change our society. Why so many of us who have lived that experience, the aspect of poverty, through no laziness on the part of our parents, every single experience we have out here spoke about how much our mothers and our fathers and our grandparents worked. But we understand the structure of our society in the uneven distribution of wealth. And the fact that we live from hand to mouth, it is not that we do not like to work, we work. And that is why we are engaged in this struggle, where we confront society to try to change that distribution of wealth, so that we can live, my brother David. We know each other real good, through you, Madam President. I know that time this exchange will go on like this. We have that obligation to ensure that we do the best that we can to ensure that the opportunities are there. And this is what this pension payment, it comes like an advantage or a blessing in disguise. Yes, there are the issue of sufferings, because our members suffer. But now the fact that you are getting a lump sum of money in your hand, it gives you an opportunity. It was a savings for you at a high cost to you, yes. But you can clear up a number of your outstanding debts, and you can reinvest it or invest it in the future of your children and grandchildren in terms of education. We look forward to this positive change, and therefore this gesture, not just a gesture, okay, this is not just a gesture, this is something we struggled for. The current administration has accepted the ruling of the court. And it is so interesting for us as working class people, the importance of election cycles. The importance of election cycles, where we can get our leaders and our leaders-to-be to commit themselves. Some has reneged. Let me put it this way, because sometimes you get into office and then you feel you can do what you want, forgetting to remember that 5 years will come, or 4.5 years will come, or 3 years will come, because we do not have a fixed date for election. We can call election before. And then the people will speak. So we know that those who have reneged in the past might be sitting on this side. To be quite frank, this is an open discussion. This is the reality of what we are facing. And therefore a word to the wise should be sufficient. Because time will pass. But I am in the moment, and I'm not worried about tomorrow. At this moment, what I'm speaking of is the aspect of the 60 million and the continuation of our members as they retire to receive their pensionable benefits. That is really, really, really commendable. And for the record's sake, once again, this is not a favor. This is something we struggle for. This is the fight to respect our Constitution. And yes, we have to do constitutional amendments. One will agree with that. But what we're addressing here is that which we have. And the workers have fought hard and long. And our many leaders of the movement, from the 80s to now, have all contributed to these struggles. And our many workers who have spoken out have contributed. So we are not granted a favor. But we must recommend, we must recognize the action of this government not to make it harder for us, because we'll have to continue struggling. And although we knew we would have won, but it is better not to have had to struggle longer, because we have done that in the vineyard. And it is the same way. There are lessons to be learned. And in that program, through you, Madam President, that our comrades did so honorably last night as part of the TUC Solidarity Week of activities. And where some workers called, because all related there, about sometimes they get frustrated that the unions are not doing anything, time has passed. And we have battles that have gone on for 15 years, for 12 years. In this case, it is from 83 to now. But look at it. Look at the most recent example. Our public officers and our teachers in particular, the dock salary was repaid. And had they given up that struggle, had they not continued that struggle of work to rule, because the only thing we have, through you, Madam President, is our labor power that we can control. Had they not done that, this incumbent administration may not have been in the position to address it. I'm not saying it would not have, because it may have been resolved. Had they given up? In other words, had it not been a contentious issue. So let us say, for instance, and I could attest to that. But I'm saying, the struggle for the lesson for our members is that this took place in 2018, the Christmas period in 2018. Had our teachers and other public officers not carried on that struggle, and let us say they had said, look, boy, in 2019, the matter is resolved, meaning that we are not making an issue over it, it would not have been an outstanding issue to be addressed. And therefore, our public officers and our teachers must be commended. And the leadership of the unions must be commended for consistently struggling. And that's one of the major lessons. So the government, current administration, must be commended. Yes? The Prime Minister, yes, because he's the leader. But I also know there is collective responsibility. I don't think that you just want to, I know there's collective, the cabinet must be congratulated. Because see, on one hand, no, but see, it's not just about you. Remember, other people are listening. This has been carried live. And therefore, this is an education session for us all. There's something called collective responsibility. And therefore, I need to praise you too. Because if someone does something, and they say it's the Prime Minister, and your cabinet does not come out and take a position, you have to take collective responsibility. So I think you deserve collectively to be praised for this. And our workers, and our other workers in the other workplaces, so be it in Spice Island Beach, where they have not paid the workers, be it in SGU, these struggles continue. And we give them that assurance that these struggles will continue. As in the case with La Source after Hurricane Ivan, that it took us 15 years to get the money to our members. And the strong lesson is that out of over 150 workers, over 200 workers in La Source, give or take, when a number of them signed up to continue that struggle in the court, and the employer threatened them that if they do not remove their name, they will not be rehired. And some, out of pure necessity, understanding that, because you need to work, remove their names. And after the victory came, they were not entitled, because under the legal system, to take certain class matters to court, you have to give individual names. So the lesson here is that if you are not prepared to lose, you will not. He who is not prepared to lose will not win, most times. So it must be commended for that. And those are the lessons. The question of TAMCC, it is really heartening to have this matter resolved. We are aware that the other matters, as through you, Madam President, has been indicated, but our unions are at a place that they are comfortable where we are today, and this could only augur well for our people, as TAMCC is our highest tertiary institution. We found monies to do all different things in the past. And we are very happy where we are. And it's another reflection of struggle. Because these workers are out for months. These workers are out for months. And it's a struggle that lasted over about 10 years, 2012 to 2022. I want to end by once again recognizing the resolution, the pension, particularly the 60 million, and that which goes forward. And to call upon our members and our leaders to assist in helping to manage those resources, to call upon the administration. And we know everything cannot happen overnight. Everything cannot happen overnight. But we do not believe that it would be difficult to identify the nurses within our healthcare system who have been given and given without being permanent. By not lumping everyone together. Yes, there are hundreds, thousands of workers who are considered to be temporary, which is a violation of the law, Section 29(5) of the Employment Act. But we can start and put into motion that campaign promise. Everything will not come in terms of permanency one time, but we can do a demonstration in a practical way of at least starting with the nurses and our population and our workers will understand it, given the importance of all workers, but there is no doubt that our healthcare system stands out and there is an urgent need to address those matters. So I want to end by recognizing what the government has done, this administration, the pension, the doc salary, the TAMCC, and to make that appeal for the nurses and saying that we do not see the relationship, my dear friend, between the court ruling and the aspect of permanency of our workers. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thanks, Senator Andre Lewis. And I want the Honorable Leader of Government Business, Senator Thomas.
Madam President, I rise just to make some concluding statement on the matter. And I'm very happy and I want to commend my colleagues for supporting the bill, and also my colleagues on the other side for expressing their support also in a tangible way. And I think it's a good demonstration to the Grenadian public that we are prepared to work together. I've recorded some of the concerns raised, and my good friends here have also responded to some of the concerns. I want to assure my good friend Senator Cox that in no way I try to bash the past administration for appropriation bills. I know it's a customary thing. If ever I came across in that manner, it was no intention of me in doing so, because I understand the need and the urgency of situations like that. However, I also want to draw to your attention and to the House attention that while the credit that you have given to us, we accept it, and quite rightly so. And we also, at times, we want to blow our own trumpet. Nothing wrong with that. And I will not take any bashing for those issues that we have not dealt with as yet. It's a process, and we will soon get there. But I did indicate to you that when we came into office, we have analyzed the situation, we have itemized some of our problems, and we have prioritized. And in going forward, we'll be dealing with them in a very responsible way, in ensuring that we give good governance to this country. We want to make sure that the issues that we are dealing with now are the issues that need to be dealt with at this point in time. So I think the Grenadian people understand that we need the time to govern with prudence, and we will try our best in going forward. I must admit, and I want it to be recorded, that we welcome the fire station in St. David. We are grateful for it. I have been begging for it since 2013. I begged more in 2018, and the parliamentary rep of St. David's, he begged a lot for it in 2022, and it is in St. David. I'm happy that it is there, and I know the people in St. David will be very happy for it also. On the issue of Pridell lastly, it is a burning issue, and I appreciate the fact that Senator Sinclair has raised it, and I want to assure Senator Clare that it's one of the issues that we are talking a lot about in the ministry. As a matter of fact, I personally met with the Commissioner of Police to discuss the issue and the way forward. He has provided me with some documents of the past. I am studying it. We are working feverishly to make sure that it happens. It's a burning issue for the farmers, and we know definitely it's a problem that we have to deal with. But I also want to bring to your attention, it's an old problem. It's a problem that has been there for a very long time. I personally am not satisfied with what has been done with it for the past 10 years. And we will address it. I mean, we are only 3-4 months, going into 4 months in government. It's a matter that has to be dealt with. We definitely know for a fact that the problem didn't start in June, and we will not be able to answer it now. But I appreciate your comments, and I'm hoping that at some point in time we'll be able to sit down and put something together, because we are working in the interest of the farmers, and they need that assistance quite likely. I also want to assure you that in analyzing the situation in the various ministries, the Ministry of Agriculture in particular, I don't think there are any other ministry that has deteriorated so bad in Grenada than the Ministry of Agriculture. Out of 10 departments, we are missing 7 heads, and you could understand when you don't have a head leading a process, what can happen there. It is not easy to fill those positions, as one may think, especially when we are working under the principle of wrong pegs for wrong holes and square pegs for square holes. If we are doing that, it means that we just cannot handpick people and just place in positions. The human resources that we need in many of those ministries is just not available, or you cannot find them now. There are a lot of people unemployed, but we have to recognize our education system also will be looking at the whole question of making people employable. It's not only being unemployed, but you have to be employable. And we will be spending a lot of money in making sure that our Grenadian people can take up the jobs that are available in those instances. So we do have the job is great in managing our country, but I think our government is up to it, and we are ready to govern. And Madam President, I hope that with the approval of this bill, for the next couple of months, we will demonstrate what we are really made of and what our real plans for this country in terms of going forward. So once again, I thank you very much, and I hope that you will, the next time we are back here, you will be able to give the government some more credit for the good work that they are doing. I thank you.
I thank the Honorable Senator Adrian Thomas, Leader of Government Business, and your team for proposing, supporting, and clarifying matters in relation to the proposed Supplemental Appropriation Act. And I would like to thank the other side for seeking clarifications, raising the what one can call perhaps a doctrine of necessity on some proposals and projects, including the diplomats, and asking to help look around the budget for savings and unspent funds and so on. So I think it's been a healthy debate that can help both sides understand more, as well as do deeper analysis. And I think it just makes for a stronger administration of the legislation where it's to be enacted. Having said that, I think we can now go to the question. So, honorable members, the question proposed is that whereas it is necessary to provide for the services of the state of Grenada for the year 2022 by means of a supplementary appropriation act, be it resolved that Supplementary Appropriation Act 2022 for the period 1st of January to 31st December 2022 be approved. Honorable members, the question is that the Supplementary Appropriation Act be approved. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those to the contrary view say nay. The ayes have it. Indeed, the ayes have it.
Item 15, bills.
That's it. Clerk. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022.
An act to appropriate an additional sum of $194,702,991 Eastern Caribbean currency to the service of the state of Grenada for the fiscal year 1st January to 31st December 2022, shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022.
Honorable Leader of the Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. And the fact that we have debated so extensively, I think I have nothing more to say on the bill at this point in time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time, and all those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. All those of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022.
Honorable Adrian Thomas.
Madam President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. Discussion? I see none. So the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2022.
Item 16, public business.
Honorable Roderick Sinclair.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand to present one of my motions that I have before the House. Something is wrong in my mic. Yeah. Maybe I need some more renewable energy. Okay, so it's the motion. So it's a motion on the need for a government to increase its emphasis on intellectual property, related treaties, and associated laws to benefit agriculture and fisheries. That is the motion. And it reads, whereas intellectual property in agriculture and fisheries stand to bring increased economic benefits to Grenada, and whereas despite the potential to increase the contribution agriculture and fisheries of Grenada's GDP, there is need for greater trust for the ascension of the relevant treaties and enactment of relevant laws. It goes to read, be it resolved that the Senate support the request for the governing administration to 1, prioritize and implement the relevant IP-related agriculture and fisheries treaties and associated laws that stands to increase Grenada's agriculture and fisheries contribution to the GDP, gross domestic product. And 2, to act urgently and act urgently and attract as required the relevant resources, human and financial, to successfully implement the accession of the treaties and laws so prioritized in a timely manner.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. Honorable members, the motion is, as read by Senator Sinclair. Let me read the... Thank you. The motion needs to be seconded. Senator
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Lewis?
I stand to second the motion as moved by Honorable Sinclair.
Thank you. Motion is seconded. Now we proceed with discussion. Honorable Adrian Thomas.
Madam President, I must confess that I'm not very clear in terms of where the senator is going with the motion. I am very I will definitely need some supporting documents that can really and truly clarify and make us very clear in our mind what are the economic benefits that can derive from such motion. The senator has not really and truly identified the relevant treaties that he's talking about. I don't know what the relevant treaties are. And I guess, which I don't want to, that the enactment of the relevant laws, what is he really talking about? I know he's referencing agriculture and fisheries, but I would have liked those issues to be clarified before I can, on behalf of the government, stand and really support this motion. And because we need all this clarification, Madam President, I want to ask that the Senate defer this motion for the next sitting.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. Senator Roderick St. Clair.
Yes, Madam President, thank you so much. I think, Madam President, we might be putting the cart before the horse, in the sense that I presented the motion, it was seconded, and then I have to present what I may have in my mind. But I haven't even opened my mind yet to even see. So I don't know what is the ruling on, because I haven't even spoke yet.
Thank you, Senator. I have made no ruling. I may have called too early for the response from the leader of government business. So you can proceed with your presentation on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. So it's not a marathon bill. Sorry, not the same bill, because we come out in bill. It's not a marathon discussion, but this motion is for the discussion, for the sensitization, for the edification, such that we can, in our planning, in our guidance, we can able to do more for our country. And before even going here, we ourselves say it, look at what our herbs can do. Look at what our spices can do. It's so special. We should write a book and explain all the different uses and how we can use it for cold and for arthritis. We do all that every day. We speak about it. This is what this bill is talking about. It's talking about how do we in Grenada, how does whoever is in charge of this country, how we as legislators help to protect what our people are talking about. So when the folks with the pity bomb and the Karaili and whatever it is, and even other things that we have not even discovered yet, how do we protect this? If there are no laws and regulations to protect those, it's free fall. I remember as a little boy, there was this guy coming around collecting all the butterflies with a little, first time I saw it, like a little net, and he's collecting. That was a little boy. Heaven knows what he have done with this. Heaven knows how much money he has made. And we sit here happy. Not that we didn't know, and maybe up to now, not that we don't know. But it's because we don't have regulations, we don't have laws. We're not protecting our own heritage. And this is what this is about. It is about I think I have it. Only recently, Dr. Marcel, a well-experienced scientist in Grenada, wrote a book, Selected Hubs for Export Potential. Inside there, it lists several of the different hubs, the chemical compositions, what they used to use for little remedies. So, your friend in China, Japan, or wherever, can come to Grenada, collect these hubs, go away with these hubs, find special ingredients in these hubs, make all sort of medication with these hubs, and send it back, and Brother Lacrette is buying it, and we are so happy for the hospitals. And they're making millions. But it's not protected. So the state is not gaining anything. In fact, a foreign investor, I would want to say that way, or a foreigner, naturalized or unnaturalized, can come and buy up lands that they have do what you call bioprospecting, bioprivacy, because you see certain things they are aware of, and they buy up this place, or maybe lease this place, and they can extract our resource, because they're private property now, and you don't know what is happening. Do we have an inventory of these things? Do we know how much? Do we know the value of these assets? This is what this is speaking about. It is saying, let us put laws, let us put regulations in place so that we can protect. So that, for example, the folks in Munich who does this farin for ancient years, in all the only fancy way, and we say, it's so nice. It's not protected. That tradition is not protected. So this call is a call whereby we can be able to protect those things. There are laws and regulations. We are saying, for example, our cocoa and our nutmeg is so special. But what is preventing someone from taking it, extracting chemicals and make all sort of different products throughout the world? And we're here happy. We have this special cinnamon and special this. Similarly, if you're going to the sea, or you're going to any place, in fact, I learned recently, even this Tomal project that we are doing, they identify some special species, maybe only in the world, that is there. So, this is what we're talking about. Our Grenada dove, of course, is protected. It's protected. So, there are a few treaties, a few acts, and so on we can speak about, Madam President. I don't want to go into it, it's not a big lecture, academic lecture. I'm just sharing for edification and for us to be able to bear those things in mind. Now, for me, the most familiar one I'm familiar with in Grenada is called geographic indication. That is international. So for example, we speak about the champagne, we speak about Swiss watch and all of those things like that. They are special because they are done in a certain way. They are made by a certain set of people. The culture and the tradition. We speak about jab. Okay, I'm just giving you those examples. So it's specific. But anybody can, if you don't protect it, anyone can go and say, well, this is fine. But you say, this is Munich farin. It's done in a special way. There is a code of practice that the regulations will protect those things. So whoever tried to do it, they will have problems. The issue about some of these is that, for example, the geographic indication, sometime in 2013, somewhere, I think there was a draft. And then I think there was another strategy sometime in 2015. But nothing else has happened to it. We're not saying that it's taking long, but all we're saying is that it is important So let's not leave it on the back burner, and let's bring it to the fore. Because if we can do that, this 10 or 15 even years before us, heaven knows what we would have lost already that we don't know what we lose. So we are saying, let us act quickly. So why is this? We want to increase this and plant more of this. We may have resources that we have here already, that if by just protecting it, we can be saved. So for example, we may have a special plant variety that we may want to breed. You can now attract different companies, research agencies, institutions of schools to sign certain agreements, and you know whatever it's out of, extracted from this, we can continue to get monies into the coffers of this country because we have those royalties connected to those things. This is what we're speaking about. How do you monetize those what we refer to as intangible assets that we have within our agriculture and fishery sector? So for example, let's suppose we have a special corn, I'll just use an example, special variety. How do we get maybe other companies, international companies, to come collect the material? But all this is done in certain regulated way. We have no regulations, and there is no laws connecting to protecting those things. It's not about trademark and copyright, it's beyond those things. Okay? It's beyond those things. And our learned friend, Senator Joseph, is in that legal field, so she would school me in the details, but I would release it. Okay? For example, maybe our mangoes. How do you do more research and bring monies to this country because of certain special breeding you can do? This is what we're talking about. We speak about, we have, I was speaking to even those at a session, I call it a session, within Abingi and Sotes over the weekend. And they were speaking about how our weed and marijuana is so different and special that even as we try to move in the commercialization of marijuana, the decriminalization, whichever it goes, that we don't get no kind of foreign weed come into the country unnecessarily and interfere with what we have. So they themselves already see the need for this protection. So this is not something that's in place you don't only get up and dream. This is thing that people are speaking about. Some of them, they may not have the details as to what the name is, but this is what they're talking about. This is exactly what they're talking about. So there is something that is referred to as some access to shared benefits. That is basically, and there is, and I know, Madam President, you have been around in the UN and those areas, so you would have heard names such as the Nagoya Protocol and all of those things, which are part of the treaties. We speak about the CITES, which has to deal with the endangerment of the protection of the endangered species. So, for example, the issue of our lobster, and Kong, we call lambi. We cannot ship it because all of these things and them is within a lot of these treaties. The Nagoya Protocol, I understand, is $55 US a year. Okay, I think we signed it, but we haven't go further. So what I'm saying is that this bill is calling. That bill, I keep saying because we come out in that thing. This motion is calling essentially for the administration, because they have the framework within the Ministry of Legal Affairs and CAIPO and so on, to not put this on the back burner. And within your planning, within the staffing, that we make sure that we don't isolate agriculture and fisheries resources to just the mere physical product, but there are the intangible products that we can. In fact, Madam President, as a matter of intangible product, intangible assets, the private sector is so central to this. Because if the private sector realize that in mango there are 25 different special products and they can extract it and to do certain type of things, they'll quickly try to see how they can invest in that. What happens? Things start spiraling. In fact, in some countries, in Asia, in the US too, what do you find happening? These intangible assets, they are start valuing them. So you have to have special skills in valuation of these assets. So once you start valuation, you know where I'm going. It means that you can take this to a bank or some financing institution, and you can able to get maybe seed money, other type of money to invest, to expand and so on. But again, normally you would want to have collaboration with the government. So the government might say, well, I will back this by 25%, such that, because you know, in research and development, you may have risk and so on. You have to manage risk all the time. And so at the end of the day, you may find young entrepreneurs, young innovators, since even at the school level, doing things that can be protected. But right now, if you're doing those things and inventing, the chances are they are not protected. And in next 5, 7, 8 years, some other company come in here, and you hear they're renting land here, they're building here, they're trading here, and you realize secretly we lose a lot of our biodiversity. And we are happy moving around, that we're so proud that we could see the physical and intangible, we lose it. And this is what this call is all about. So it's not a fancy storytelling. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Senator Sinclair. Honorable Senator Adrian Thomas.
Madam President, I have listened to Senator Sinclair, and I must say that what Senator Sinclair has presented there, I think is a motion worth the while for consideration. But to be very frank, I would not like to make any move here in isolation from my fellow colleagues, my fellow cabinet colleagues, and also with the privilege of having to research and go into the various or the relevant treaties that you're talking about here. You have cited some of them. I will want some time to look into that, to make sure that those treaties relate to the agricultural sector and the fishing sector. So having said that, Madam President, I will kindly request that we defer this motion to the next sitting of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. Senator Sinclair, would you wish to respond? Oh, there is a request for the floor. Senator, wait a minute, Senator Joseph.
Madam President, I rise to support the request made by my learned colleague, leader of government business, that the motion or further debate on the motion be deferred to a later date. While I understand the thrust of what Senator Sinclair is saying, I must confess, but before I make the confession, I must say that government is committed to the agriculture and fishing sectors. Government is committed to taking any steps that will enhance productivity in those sectors and maximize the benefits that can be derived from those sectors. Government is also committed to holistic expansion and application of our intellectual property laws. But at the same time, the motion as it is presented will create some difficulty in supporting without further clarification, even some amendments to the motion. And so I think a deferment will afford both the presenter of the motion and those of us who are asked to consider the motion time on the one hand to refine the motion so that we know exactly what protocols and treaties we are going to call on government to accede to, and precisely what intellectual property benefits to agriculture and fisheries will accrue from accession to those treaties and passing of those laws. Because I listened to the learned senator, and I must confess I hear a combination of things being said, some of which do not touch and connect with intellectual property, some of which cannot be protected under intellectual property laws, but may be protected under some other kind of law. So the leader of government business makes a really good point in saying that we need the treaties clearly identified so that we may study them to determine whether they are concerned with intellectual property and or agriculture. So I think it would be in good order for a deferment so that we can do justice to the motion, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Joseph. I think I skipped a step. The clerk is reminding me that let me go back and propose the question. So, honorable members, the question proposed is that whereas intellectual property in agriculture and fisheries stand to bring increased economic benefits to Grenada, and whereas despite this potential to increase the contribution of agriculture and fisheries to Grenada's GDP, there is a need for a greater thrust for the ascension of the relevant treaties and enactments of the relevant laws. Be it resolved, therefore, that the Senate support this request for the governing administration to 1. Prioritize the relevant and implement the IPI-related agricultural and fisheries treaties and associated laws that stand to increase Grenada's agriculture and fisheries contribution to GDP. And 2. Act urgently and attract, as is required, the relevant resources, both human and financial, to successfully implement the accession of the treaties and laws so prioritized in a timely manner. We require clerk.
I would think it's a short
break.
Yeah, let's take a short break for a few minutes. Let's adjourn for a few minutes.
Yes, the proposal is for a short adjournment, but Senator Sinclair, would you want to speak before the adjournment, or would you? Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I listened carefully. I listened carefully to the views and comments on this important matter. And whilst you may not have a specific, it really cannot provide a specific. The call is for the relevant research to be done according to the different priorities and the different impacts, etc. And take action. That's what the call is. The call is not saying go and sign up for geographic indication in the morning, go and sign up for Nagoya Protocol. That is not what it's saying. No. It says very clearly that you prioritize the relevant ones and you take the necessary action and you get the necessary resource. I provided some broad areas, like all of us here. There are departments within the government system. There's projects that you can write. There is technical support that you can receive for many things that I've done before in this country, for which we never even knew before we even started. This is what the call is, you know. And I don't expect the call to take action in the morning, because this is a long process. If it wasn't done for the last, whenever Grenada existed, I don't expect this to just happen overnight. What is important is that this dialogue has been going on for a while. And this dialogue is a dialogue that we want to bring here. Remove it from under the mango tree on the river stone in the rum shop and bring it here so that we, here, who the nation looks at and expect to seek their interests, can start being aware. A lot of things in our life we're not even aware of, even in Grenada, because we're not in the space. So the issue of deferral, Madam President, I don't see the need. If members don't see the need for the government to, well, not the government, for the Senate to say, well, government, take a look at this thing and see what they can do for this country. This is opportunity for resources. Otherwise, the question is, are we fooling ourselves when we say, well, the cinnamon is good, the shadow benny is good. Are we going to live in this hope? But I wonder if anything will happen. I wonder. And whilst we're doing this, others are watching and say, look at them. Let me see how I can quickly extract as much as I can before they really get smart and realize what they have.
I thank the Senator. And we have a 5 to 10 minute recess. No more. Thank you.